Hey guys, it's me, Super Duper, back with another video. And today I want to do an idea that I got from a YouTuber named Blackline. He's a really good YouTuber. You should go and check him out. But he does a lot of universe reconstruction videos. He does a DC one. He does a lot of them. But today I wanted to do one of his concepts. Do it differently. There are definitely, obviously, comparisons in both their videos. But mostly it is different. But yeah, it's the what if the MCU was run by Fox? So it was the characters from Fox. So X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Daredevil. So yeah. So that's what I'm gonna be doing here today. And make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. But yeah, so yeah, let's just get into it. So first movie in this phase is the first movie is gonna be Xavier. Obviously, this is already very different. Xavier is gonna be a movie very similar to First Class, because First Class is the best X-Men movie. Also, I may mention that the costumes will be the accurate comic costumes. You know what I mean? So yeah. So first, Xavier is gonna be a movie obviously focused on Charles Xavier and Magneto and their friendship and the decline of their friendship eventually, and it's gonna be them meeting and trying and fighting the Hellfire Club, and it will be basically very similar with Shaw killing Magneto's parents and then him killing Shaw with a coin and stuff. It'll be a very similar movie and ending even with their brotherhood, but there will be no Mystique in the movie, and no Hank McCoy. Actually, no, Hank could be in the movie as he wouldn't team up with them, but he would help them and stuff, and you would kind of become friends with both of them, but they would mostly be friends. But there would be no X-Men, it would just be them. Which would give Charles the idea to start the X-Men later on in the phase. So yeah, and then next movie in this is also there are only two people who get a trilogy in the first saga. Cause yeah, I feel like it would really only work with two movies, because I do want to make other characters and other counterparts and stuff. The next movie would be obviously the last one is the counterpart to Iron Man. This one would be the counterpart to the Incredible Hulk. And the person who fits the Incredible Hulk most in the X-Men universe is obviously Beast, so that's going to be this movie. And Fear the Beast was an actual movie going to be made, and it seemed really good, but yeah. But that never came to fruition and stuff, sadly. But yeah, obviously with a scientist who, very smart and intelligent scientist who, but then he also is very strong in another version of him, which will not at all be, there are differences, obviously, but yeah, that was probably the best character part, so yeah, that would be this movie, and it would end with the post-credit scene of Beast being, Beast would already hit, Charles. Also, in the last movie would end with Charles losing his legs, losing his walking, very similar to how he does in the movie, by Magneto reflecting the bullets and hitting him in the back. And then also, but then he would also get his yellow chair, and he would shave his head, so then he would be basically just a symbol. And at Fear the Beast, the villain of this movie would be the Wendigo, I think it's called. I don't know. The Wendigo. But yeah, it's a character who's not that well known. But yeah, he was actually supposed to be the villain of Fear the Beast, the real movie. So yeah, so he should be the villain here. And he's very similar to Hank McCoy, obviously. Next movie would be the counterpart to Iron Man 2, so Xavier 2, it would be called. And I don't really know much about this movie besides the fact that it would be him it would be kind of about him trying to start the X-Men, and obviously Beast would be in this movie, fully beast out. Because yeah, I feel like that would happen like at the end of Xavier the first movie, and then he would be the beast form throughout all the Fear of the Beast, trying to find a cure. Okay, yeah, I'm adding more stuff to Fear of the Beast, but in Fear of the Beast, the probably intentional plot would be him trying to Hank trying to find a cure for his mutation, but he would end up getting the cure, but then he would end up deciding that he shouldn't have the cure because he's mutant and power and stuff. So yeah. And then Xavier 2 would be him and Hank trying to make the X-Men. It would be kind of similar to Apocalypse, because Moore McTaggart, who he did erase the memory like the same way he did in First Class in the last movie. It would basically be the same aspect of Apocalypse, where he's becoming back with Moore McTaggart, and the same thing happens and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, and then at the end of this movie, I think it would be similar to, I guess, kind of like, what's it called? Suicide Squad, where Charles would get a list of names of people, which the list of people who could join the X-Men would include him and Beast, but the other names would be the original 6 X-Men, because that's what they actually should do in the MCU, is make the original 6 X-Men the real X-Men. So it would be obviously him and Hank, but Iceman, Cyclops, Jean, and Angel, and yeah. And everybody would have their comic book costumes in this, I think I mentioned that before. But yeah, even Beast would have like his Speedo from, the comic book and stuff. Same thing with this next character I'm going to be talking about, Iceman, who would also have his Speedo from the comics. But Iceman would get his own movie. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, the villain of Xavier 2 would be Juggernaut. See, Juggernaut was his half-brother, and his mission was to destroy Charles and stuff. So it just kind of worked for Juggernaut to be the villain of it. And with it, and why I made Iceman have one of the movies is because with the original 6 Avengers, with the original 6 X-Men, there are so many who could get a movie, and Iceman kind of has an arch enemy, not really, but he could have very easily an arch enemy like what they do in the Fox movies. Also, I forgot. Okay, so here's the thing about this universe. I forgot to mention at the start of this. In this hypothetical universe where this happened, obviously not in this universe, but like in a universe where all these movies were made, what happened was, I would say that they kept the rights to Daredevil because they kept on making movies of Daredevil that which, because let's say in this universe, the first Daredevil movie, which I think was actually a really good movie, they made they made 2 more sequels, and which would start out through this movie, but it wouldn't be connected to this movie, because Daredevil, I do have plans for them later on in this video, and Fantastic Four, let's just say, finish their trilogy with them going to space and fighting like Skrulls and stuff. So yeah, because so that's why they more so delayed their appearances in this universe, they had the rights, and that's how they kept the rights to these characters, because they often, like every so often, made a movie about them, right? So anyways, and then the next movie would be Cyclops. I don't have the biggest thing for this movie. Basically, it would be the counterpart to Captain America, and basically it would be Cyclops. It would basically be a basic superhero movie with Cyclops, but also Jean would be in this movie, because Jean is obviously his love interest, and yeah, there would be and it would basically be a love story between them two. but he would also get his classic costume from the 90s show. But the villain of this movie would be Angel's father. I forget his name, but yeah, I forget the actual guy's name, but still. But yeah, that would be the villain of this movie. And yeah, so, and Angel would be basically like the goon of him, where the government would force him to manipulate his son to help him with him. So he would be like the physical threat. But at the end of this, there would be, obviously this had come out about Angel's dad, and he would go to prison, and yeah. So yeah. And Angel and Scott would become friends because he freed them from the mind control. And the ending fight would be a fight with Cyclops as the lead, and then Angel and Jean, who would be the counterparts to Hawkeye and Black Widow, fighting a Sentinel, and then they would end up defeating and stuff. And then and the movie would probably end with Cyclops giving a big speech. Anyways, and then the next movie would be the counterpart to Avengers, which is obviously the X-Men. This movie would basically be very similar to the original comic book, because it would have all the original 6 X-Men donning their classic costumes. Like Cyclops would have his costume of like the 90s show. Jean would have her costume for the 90s show. Angel would get his costume from, like, the comics where it's the red and white design. He would have that costume with, like, the 2 little rings in the middle, which you could keep. Charles would have his yellow chair. Iceman and Beast would each have their, like, Speedo. So yeah, that would be this movie, and Cyclops would obviously be the leader, being the Captain America counterpart. And I already said the counterparts in this video, but yeah. And the villain of this movie would be Magneto, because it would be like one of the peoples who helped him, and he would be basically a helper of Apocalypse and stuff. And that would be the teasing Thanos and stuff, you know what I mean? But yeah. But would Apocalypse really be the Thanos? You'll have to find out for watching more of this video. But anyways, so going into phase 2, the first movie would obviously be ending of Charles Xavier's trilogy would be Xavier 3, and this movie would have Omega Red as the villain, and Charles would have to fight him and stuff. And at the end of this, movie, Charles would, I don't really know, Charles would get married to Moira McTaggart, being the counterpart of Pepper. And yeah, that would be the end of this movie. And then that would be this movie. And he would fight. Oh my god, I already said that, but yeah, that would be this movie. I don't know much about this movie, but yeah. And Omega Red would be manipulated by Stryker to help him work for him. So yeah. Anyways, I kept on saying so yeah, but whatever. So changing Iceman, because Iceman doesn't really need a trilogy, and someone does need a trilogy, because once you think about it, the second lineup for the Avengers was much smaller than it would be, and there wasn't any movies of them until, like, at the very end of phase 2, where they made one movie, but he wasn't even in the second lineup, he was in the third line. But here's the thing, many of these characters could actually have their own movie franchise, and especially Wolverine. So Wolverine would be the new comparison to Iceman. And obviously this movie would be a lot like Wolverine Origins, except throughout the whole movie he would be wearing his yellow and brown costume, but then at the end he would get his yellow and blue costume, be 100% accurate to the comics, and it would be really cool and stuff. So yeah, but there would be no Deadpool in this movie. The main villain would instead be Sabretooth, who would be more comic accurate. And Gambit wouldn't be in this movie, and yeah. Yeah, that would be this. So that would be the Sabretooth would be the villain. Obviously, I mentioned that, but yeah. And then with Cyclops 2, the villains would be the counterpart to the Captain America Winter Soldier. The villains would be a new version of the Hellfire Club. Obviously Shaw died, so now the leader would be Emma Frost, and the plot of this movie, I think, would be that when the battle of, I guess it would be called the Battle of New York in this universe too. The Battle of New York with the X-Men stuff, would so yeah, the Battle of New York with the X-Men stuff would end. They would cut with when Jean was fighting. They would pick up signals of a big thing, because it would be obviously the Phoenix Force. So the whole plot would be Emma Frost trying to help the Phoenix Force, and she would kind of be the counterpart to Bucky, I guess. But she would help him for a bit because she would be manipulated by the Phoenix Force. But yeah, and then this movie would end with Scott having to fight her, but then she would switch back and remember Scott, and this movie would end with. Well, this movie would probably start with Scott getting married to her, because yeah, and then yeah, so then that would make this movie even more emotional and stuff. But then, she gets convinced and she gets all her memories back, and they think that the Phoenix Force left her, but it didn't really leave her. So yeah, that would be this. That would be the second Cyclops movie. And anyways, a couple years ago, they probably finished up their trilogy of Fantastic Four. So now they want to include them in this universe with the counterpart to Guardians of the Galaxy. So the counterpart of the Guardians of the Galaxy would obviously be their second team, which would be the Fantastic Four, and it would have the same cast from Fantastic, but it wouldn't be the same. Obviously, it wouldn't be like at all similar. But yeah, it would have they would have their classic costumes, basically like. Actually, no, I'm gonna change it. Yeah, it would have the same cast from the Fantastic, but they would have the same costumes, like they wouldn't have the same costumes. I messed up. They wouldn't have the same costumes. They would have the costumes from the comics, like basically like the one John Krasinski wears in Multiverse of Madness. Those ones they would wear, and it would be a really funny and good movie with Doctor Doom being the villain, and it would have like a strong family connection, very much like Guardians of the Galaxy. And Doctor Doom would be the main villain, and they'd have to fight him, and they'd stop him. So yeah. And then the next one would be the counterpart to Age of Ultron, which would be X-Men. I would call it Rise of the Brotherhood, and the villains are obviously the Brotherhood, with Magneto helping them, and it would be the giant-sized cast. So we would get Wolverine back from his own movie, and then we'd also get Colossus, Nightcrawler, all the characters, Banshee, Storm, all those characters from Giant Size, even like the other guy, like the fire guy, and the guy from like the Gifted, whatever, you know what I mean? And it would be those guys. And also, I would like to include in this movie were people who would help them at the end. People who would help the X-Men at the end of this movie and switch would be the same counterparts in the movie Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. So yeah, they would basically be the same. They would be the same counterparts, I guess, of themselves, because they do own half the rights and stuff. So yeah, and it even works better because instead of the whole Sokovia origin story, Instead, they would just be the daughter of Magneto, the daughter and son of Magneto. So yeah, so they would help him out. And then Quicksilver would die in this movie, obviously. And also, they would have all the comic book costumes, obviously. But Quicksilver would have more of an accurate comic book costume instead of the shirt, which was kind of accurate. And Scarlet Witch would have her comic book costume, very similar to like WandaVision, their costume and that. But anyways, so yeah. And then to finish off Phase 2, which would be the counterpart to Ant-Man, which would be Gambit. Gambit would yeah. So basically, the villain of this movie would be the League of Thieves. I think they're called. I don't really remember their name, but they're the society that raised Gambit, and it would be very similar because he would get out of prison, and then he would discover his mutant abilities, and he would help out his friends. But he would start off robbing them, and he would start off by helping them rob and stuff. But then he would eventually become a hero, and he would fight with probably like I would have him fight Nightcrawler. Also, I guess then 1 second. Also, I guess in Xavier 2, Colossus would be introduced. I guess because yeah, he would be the counterpart to War Machine, I guess. But there would be more X-Men, obviously. But yeah, and then in Cyclops 2, I guess Nightcrawler would be introduced. So yeah, he would fight because he would be the counterpart to Falcon, and I would have him fight Nightcrawler at the Institute in a very similar scene to the movie. So yeah, and Rogue would be teased at in the movie. So yeah, and then going on to Phase 3, which would start off with the last movie, Cyclops' trilogy, which would be the counterpart to Captain America: Civil War, which would be Cyclops: House of M. Obviously, this is more of a Scarlet Witch story in the comics, but Scarlet Witch is kind of like the whole starting piece of Civil War in the movie. So yeah, so this would kind of make sense. Anyways, so basically, I don't know much about this movie, but it would basically be that. Actually, I do kind of know some, but it would basically be that it would be the X-Men would have a very similar scene in the start of the movie, where there would be the new lineup, and then Charles would find, and then Scarlet Witch would accidentally kill a couple people fighting someone like let's just say it would be I don't know, he would have to be a Hellfire Club member. Let's just say it would be like I don't know, Multiple Man, because he would probably be part of the Hellfire Club in the second movie. So yeah, Multiple Man, and she would kill him because he tried to kill himself and kill Cyclops with him, but in turn she would accidentally kill some people in the process. So yeah, if we start off the events of the movie, where first there would be kind of like a civil war between the X-Men, but then Cyclops and her try to change stuff around so she didn't do it, which would be the story of the comics, but then it would end up leading to instead no, I would say what happens is basically that it would be a very similar movie up to the airport fight. But then after the airport fight, instead of Jean and also Gambit would be in this movie, and Daredevil would be introduced. But instead, because he will be the counterpart to someone, but yeah, but Jean and Cyclops would get out of their like Bucky, but it would be, but then the ending would be, what would happen is also Scarlet Witch would come with them probably because they would want to fear. But then after all that, she decides without any other person to rewrite time if X-Men were if mutants were the dominant race, and it would basically be kind of like the House of M story for the comic, but only be for around like 30 minutes, and then she would rewrite time again, not to erase all mutants, but to stop it all, but it would lead to one of the but it would lead to in this universe seeing also I would say that Rhodey was like critically injured by Vision in Civil War. Instead, this time Colossus would actually just die. Because she would be the counterpart to Rhodey, obviously. So that's why she wrote time. But then she would go back to the exact same way it was, and actually kill off Colossus. So Colossus would still be dead. So yeah. And then the next movie in this universe would be Kitty Pryde. Oh, also I forgot to mention in the last one, the villain would be the counterpart to Zemo, which would be Mr. Sinister. And he wouldn't be the full, whatever Mr. Sinister from the comics. He would just be the Essex Sinister. But it would tease at the end of this movie that he would get the powers of Mr. Sinister from the comics. The next one would be Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat. I don't know much about this movie. What would happen in this movie? It would it would be kind of similar. It wouldn't really be similar to Doctor Strange, but she would kind of have like superpowers. And the villain of this movie would be Trask, and she would have to fight Sentinels and stuff. And that would kind of be the movie. And I don't know much about the movie, but yeah, that would be basically this movie. But at the end of it, she would discover that she has time traveling abilities, which would come into later on in this movie. So then after that, after Kitty Pryde would be Fantastic Four 2, which the villain would be Galactus and the Silver Surfer, obviously. And it would be the team from the original having to try to fight Galactus and the Silver Surfer, which is basically the same thing, but yeah, and it would be very similar to the actual movie we got and stuff. But yeah, it would be because also the villain of Guardians 2 is also a very powerful space god, so this would make sense for it to be Galactus and Fantastic Four 2. So yeah, sorry, as I was saying, the villain, seeing that the villain of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was like a very powerful space god. The villain of this movie would be other very powerful space god Galactus, and they would have the funeral at the end. And he would be the classic big purple and guy from the suit from the comics and stuff. So yeah, and that would be this movie. And then the next one, which would be the counterpart to Spider-Man, would be Deadpool, and it would be a very similar movie with some changes. Colossus wouldn't be in it. Instead I would probably replace it with Nightcrawler with his comic costume, because Colossus is dead at this point in the universe. So yeah. And he would have his classic comic costume, and the villains would have their classic comic costume. Also, there'd be no references like McAvoy or Stewart, because in all the confusing timeline references, because that wouldn't be happening in this universe. And yeah. So yeah. So that would be Deadpool 1, and yeah, and then the next one would be Thor 3, which would instead here be Wolverine 2, because yeah. Also the villains would be in Deadpool. I forgot to mention this. The villains would be the exact same villains from the movie. So yeah, but they would have their costumes in it. So yeah, and then in Wolverine 2, the villain would be his son, and he would probably meet X-23. He would have his classic comic book costume. yeah, his son would be the villain. He's like the character in the comic, and he would have to fight him. And yeah, but then at the end he would probably turn good, or at least kind of like an anti-hero, and just go off and stuff. But yeah, and then X-23 at the end of the movie would get a gray design from the comics, a gray suit from the comics, because I think that's really cool. So yeah, anyway, that would be that movie, and that would be Wolverine 2. And then Daredevil is gonna be the next one, because he would be the counterpart to Black Panther, and he would be introduced in House of M, like I said. Yeah, because this is the second like franchise that wouldn't actually be like X-Men related, really. So yeah, that would be it. It's just, so yeah, it would be kind of be weird and stuff. So this movie would, yeah, so it would be kind of like more of a different movie. And the villain of this movie would be, he would have to fight. It would also, the actor who would play Charlie Cox would be, no, the actor who played Daredevil would be Charlie Cox, because yeah, and because of, and the show is really good, but it wouldn't exist in this universe. It would be more of a stripped down version of the show, which wouldn't be as good, but it would be still, it would have to happen of season 1, and the villain would be Kingpin, and yeah, he would have to, yeah, and then at the end, yeah, he would fight with Kingpin, but the suit would be more comic accurate, right? It would be, so yeah, that would be, that would be the Daredevil movie. And the next movie would be the counterpart to Avengers Infinity Wars, which would be X-Men Apocalypse in this universe. So yeah, so obviously, so the villain of this movie would be Apocalypse, and he would fight all the X-Men, and what would happen is he would be winning, but then Jean goes full Phoenix on him. Also, Gambit and Angel wouldn't be in this movie. But he would go full Phoenix on. He would go full Phoenix on Apocalypse, which would end with the Phoenix Force taking her over. And what I would forget to mention is, personally, I like it if the Phoenix Force was just inside Jean as a child, not really like Last Stand, where it was like another personality, but it was just like a power that she was born with. So yeah, which would kill Apocalypse, very similar to the movie, but but then she would decide to kill half the universe, half the population, and it would leave a ragtag group of heroes to pick up the pieces and to try to help. The heroes who would be left, I haven't really pinpointed them, but it would be the original Avengers, Gambit, instead of Rocket, it would be Mr. Fantastic, and I decided to include Kitty Pryde in it because she would be important. So yeah, and that would be the new one, and this franchise would, instead of be called the Infinity Saga, would be called the Phoenix Saga. So yeah, and that would be the ragtag group of heroes who would have to like pick up the pieces. And yeah, I would also say that Daredevil wouldn't be in this movie, and Daredevil would probably help him, because I would like Daredevil just to be there, because yeah, and just because I would, because like Daredevil's more of a street level villain stuff, so yeah, hero, whatever, and he probably wouldn't be in this movie, taking an out seat with him, and then he would help out them in the next move, in the counterpart to Endgame. And then the next movie would be the counterpart to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man and the Wasp, yes, that's what it is. But it would be which would be, instead in this movie, Gambit and Rogue, where Gambit would be the counterpart to Wasp, and they would have a love story and stuff, and yeah, and the villain of this movie would be yet again be Trask, but in this she would actually be put away, and the Sentinels would be stopped by them, and yeah, and that's, I don't know much about this movie, but that would be the basic premise. next one would have to be a female hero. And there wasn't really left. I thought about making this Jean, but it would have to help with the whole thing, and she wouldn't help that much. She would be the villain of the next movie. So yeah. So instead, it was Jubilee. Jubilee would be the Jubilee, the counterpart to Captain Marvel, obviously, and it would be basically where Jubilee would have to fight a bunch of people. She would have to. I don't know much about the movie, but the villain would be Psylocke, and she would have to fight Psylocke, and she would win, obviously. But then the snap would happen. This would take place in like the 80s, 90s. Let's just say that she doesn't age like Captain Marvel. But then she would be one of the characters who was left alive for the next movie. Which would be the big movie of the Endgame counterpart, which would be in this called X-Men Days of Future Past, and it wouldn't be obviously the exact thing of X-Men Days of Future Past. It wouldn't, because the villain wouldn't be Trask and the Sentinels. Instead, the villain would be that there would be this timeline where a bunch of people are dead and it's basically an apocalypse, and Jean died with the rest of the people. The whole goal of this movie was to kill the Phoenix Force and Jean before she killed all the people, but that wouldn't work in the end. And a past Jean, and that wouldn't work because then it would obviously mess with the timeline. So on a twist on Endgame, instead all the people who died who actually just died in the last movie, in Apocalypse, would stay dead, but then they would have to fight Gina as the end, but Scott would kill her in a very emotional moment. So yeah, that would be it, and it would be the main death of this movie. Actually, no, Charles would be the main death because she would kill Charles in the end, and then it would be very emotional. Cyclops wouldn't retire because he has duties. And so, let's just say this: include in the team I mess up because but including the team, there would be a couple characters who would more survive, which would be Wolverine would also be in the ragtag group of heroes who survives, and Rogue and Deadpool, and that would be the people who survived, and also let's just say all the Fantastic Four survived because they were kind of outsiders. And yeah, that would basically, and let's just say they never even participated in the event of Infinity War. So I guess there wouldn't be as many people who died in that movie, but Scarlet Witch would die, I guess, and all the giant sides except for Colossus because he would be dead, and Wolverine because he was survived. Also, let's just say that Iceman died with him because now that he's not really the counterpart of Thor anymore. So yeah, Iceman would be dead too, I guess. And that would be the whole team, which would suck, but it would be more of a bittersweet ending because they did end up saving the day, and a bunch of heroes did survive. But then also they couldn't bring them back, and Jean died. But still, it would set up for the next movie would be kind of like. Also, let's just say that Megasonic Teenage Warhead would be in the Daredevil movie. Would be in the Deadpool movies would also survive. So yeah. And the next one would be Deadpool 2. It would obviously be very similar, with Cable being the main villain, but he would have more of an accurate costume to the comics. It would kind of be, I guess yeah, he would have more of an accurate costume to the comics, and then, but there would be no Colossus counterpart, but yeah, and Domino would be introduced. It would be very similar, but also there would be no obviously confusing timeline. There would be no the cameo with like all the past actors and stuff, but yeah, and it would also, but yeah, it would be more like a refreshing break for the whole studio and stuff. But yeah, and that would be that. I might make another one of Phase 4 and then Phase 5 and then Phase 6 because I can't do them in their own videos and like all one video because that would be way too long. This video is really long as it is. But yeah, I really did like this video and I really like the concept and I hope you enjoyed it, and that's all I got for you today. So bye and see you.